Hello, everybody, and welcome to Narativ. There's a political earthquake in Ottawa tonight as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces a rebellion following the resignation of his Deputy and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. Just moments ago, a dramatic Liberal caucus meeting ended where multiple MPs openly called for Trudeau's resignation. Sources inside the closed-door meeting tell us that at least 15 MPs took to the microphone, with several directly telling the Prime Minister it's time to go. This comes after Freeland's blistering resignation letter accusing Trudeau of pursuing costly political gimmicks in response to Donald Trump's tariff threats. Now the crisis is threatening the government. Can Trudeau survive? That's tonight on Narativ Canada. Dean Blundell built his reputation as one of Canada's most controversial voices during his years at Toronto's 102.1 The Edge, before reinventing himself as an outspoken political commentator and podcaster who regularly challenges mainstream media narratives. And Dean joins us from Toronto, where he has returned from his cross-country checkup, if you will. How are you doing, Dean?
I'm great. Good to be back. It's nice to be back in Toronto, although it's funny because I was in Calgary and Vancouver and listening to my family. I went and visited my family and they're like, rush hour traffic's terrible. And then I got back to Toronto at 4:20 p.m. today. I'm like, my family is soft.
There is traffic in Toronto. You said rush hour. I thought you said Russia.
No, I got PTSD with the word Russia. I can't even talk about it at the moment. I watch too much narrative to hear the word Russia and go, oh, that's great.
That triggers me too. There's lots been going on in Canada. There's so much news. It's even making American news, and nothing in Canada ever makes American news. Here she is, Chrystia Freeland. She's the former deputy prime minister and finance minister, and no longer in the Trudeau government. Because of what? What exactly did Chrystia do?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. It depends on who you ask. If you look at the Trump tweet the other day or the Truth Social tweet, she was fired or she quit. And I know you can't necessarily trust anything the great orange guru says, but Chrystia Freeland was at odds with Justin Trudeau for quite some time. This has been a long time coming. Chrystia Freeland is incredibly, there you go. Donald Trump's tweet, the great state of Canada is stunned as the finance minister resigned or was fired from her position by Governor Justin Trudeau. Again, we'll get into that in a minute. Her behavior was totally toxic, not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the unhappy citizens of Canada. She will not be missed. And we'll get to what's behind that in a minute. But to your point, was she fired or did she quit? Nobody really knows. She put out a letter the other day that was absolutely scathing.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. She's not soft on her former boss there. She basically accuses him of political gimmicks by playing a whole bunch of games with Canada's budget, and is saying he's not ready for the task of tackling Donald Trump's America First approach as he threatens tariffs against Canada. So that's a very unusual letter for Canada.
It's unusual if you consider it in context, right? I put out a tweet the other day. I said, just imagine the vice president of the United States basically saying you're a joke to the president in a letter and then quitting, right? That's effectively what happened. She's the deputy prime minister and the finance minister. So a lot of people forget that she's just not the finance minister. In Canada, it's different. So each person who's an MP or anybody in the prime minister's cabinet or the president's cabinet, but in Canada, what happens is you also get another portfolio. And so the portfolio that she has is the finance minister, but she's also the deputy prime minister. And she's also a massive Kremlin hawk. She's got deep Ukrainian ties. She's written a couple of books. She is banned from being in Russia. You go back to the original post that you put up with Trump from his Truth Social, basically calling her toxic. You can effectively set your watch to the idea that Donald Trump is absolutely doing the Kremlin's bidding here, number one. And number two, he's never met Chrystia Freeland. Outside of his team with the USMCA last year, which she was in charge of, and he talks about $1 billion subsidy that comes up to Canada. That just means Chrystia Freeland did her job as the finance minister of Canada, put him on the back foot, and we benefited from the USMCA because she's really good at her job.
She is actually, we should note, as you point out rightly, Chrystia Freeland is one of the key voices and politicians or journalists. She was a journalist before becoming a politician and able to put this coalition against Vladimir Putin together. over the last few years. She's deeply respected across the world for that. President-elect of the United States.
Sure.
Diving into Canadian politics, insulting Canadian politicians, telling people that they're unhappy citizens in Canada. This is just a continuation of what appears to be a very complicated and complex campaign by him and Elon Musk to overthrow Trudeau. As much as this is targeted supposedly at just Chrystia Freeland, really what it is weakening Trudeau by calling him the governor instead of the prime minister, as previously referred to it as the 51st state, this great state of Canada. These are all designed to emasculate him, if you will. That's certainly the word that was used as recently as this evening on MSNBC. They were talking about Trudeau emasculating himself. This is not true. Talk to me a little bit about this unusual foreign policy of the president-elect going after America's biggest ally in the world.
Yeah, it is. I want to say it's $1.3 trillion in trade between each country every year. It dwarfs what Japan, Mexico, and China are able to do with Canada every single year. Canada is America's biggest trade partner. Canada keeps the lights on. Canada supplies water. Canada supplies energy. Canada supplies I believe, 60% of America's crude oil. And if you think about it in terms of sacrifice that Canadians have made for American initiatives, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's Iraq, 9/11, we have traditionally been side by side. But when you look at what Trump is subjecting Canada to, it's the ongoing beatdown of Canadian sovereignty. We talked about it a lot, I think about a month ago, where we did that podcast. We were talking about the effort that Russia's making to make Canada and the United States one country and to get access to the Arctic. This is just part of that plan. Justin Trudeau, for all his warts, has done a really good job of keeping Canada afloat in the G7. The right has done an incredible job of actually poisoning that fruit, and he needs to go. He really does. However, the bottom line here is it's just another brick in the wall. And the brick in the wall is, how do we get Canadians to feel inferior? How do we get Canadians on side to feel like you need to be part of this military superpower? You need to be part of us. You don't need to be your own country. And that's what we see all the time, that we see it with everything Elon Musk says about Canada. And he's the de facto president of the United States. You and I both know that. And Donald Trump didn't write this tweet. His brain trust wrote this tweet. I watched literally a video of someone okaying and saying, yeah, this is a great tweet. Let's call him the governor, 51st state. It's the demeaning of the Canadian people on and on again, and the beatdown of the Canadian people. Now, Chrystia Freeland's job here in Canada has been to try to somehow make sense of what's going on a global stage. And she's literally vilified by the Kremlin. From the time that she was at Harvard, she was considered a combatant. From the time that she came and became a journalist in Canada for the Financial Post, she always championed Ukraine. Her parents are from Ukraine. Her grandparents are from Ukraine. What we're seeing here has a bunch of different effects. It's not just, hey, let's just support Justin Trudeau, because this is like this, it's this weird backhanded Truth Social tweet where he's not only emasculating Trudeau, he's also shitting on the human being that just literally put Trudeau out of business. And it's brilliant if you look at it from that perspective. And then you have to ask yourself the question, why? And the reason why is because there's going to be a continued concerted effort to get Canadians to think they're unhappy. Pierre Poilievre has done a massive job of that over the past 2-3 years, convincing everybody Canada's broken. And we're not unhappy people. We're really happy. We live in Canada is the world's greatest social democracy outside a couple of countries in Scandinavia. And to paint that picture, much like Trump has continued to paint the picture that the election was rigged in 2020, that he's been screwed over, and he's going to win no matter what. It's this ongoing effort to continue to make people think that Canada is a country that it's not. And Chrystia Freeland, to your point, Chrystia Freeland has done the bidding of Justin Trudeau for a long time. And I will say this, as someone who is completely unbiased, she is a very smart woman. She is overly educated for the position that she's in. And if you're going to ask any intellectual or academic in this country who they would rather lead this country into 2024 to 2028 against Donald Trump and against Vladimir Putin and against the authoritarian powers that are trying to push Canada into an authoritarian government, it's her. That is why the stink is on this tweet.
I don't disagree with you on anything you're saying about how brilliant Chrystia Freeland is. She is truly brilliant. She's lovely. I don't know, she still rides a bicycle around town, but she used to ride a bicycle in her first. Everyone appreciates her and her work that she's done. However, let me just say this. I think that there is a symmetry here between what happened to Joe Biden and what's happening to Justin Trudeau. And I know you're not a great fan of Justin Trudeau, and a lot of Canadians aren't great fans, but I wonder if the reason we're not great fans of Justin Trudeau is because the Russian disinformation campaign has been quite successful. That the onslaught of Elon Musk's Twitter disinformation and propaganda, the same as it was about Joe Biden being old. In Justin Trudeau's case, is just a lot that they're throwing up against him, weakening his perception in Canada, because really he is doing a decent job and has done a decent job. There is many things along the way, and certainly this budget deficit, which would make you question that. But he's been a good manager of the country under extremely difficult circumstances. The fact that we're supposedly unhappy with him or unhappy as people is something that Musk and Trump want to project into this country, not a reality. Elon Musk has been after Justin Trudeau for over 2 years now on Twitter. Here's a collection of some of the tweets that he sent, but here's an actual timeline we put together starting in February of 2022. And Musk called Trudeau Hitler. In October 2023, Trudeau is trying to crush free speech in Canada. And it's shameful. That was about streaming regulations, I think. In November 24, he will be gone in the upcoming elections. This is just after the American elections. Elon Musk predicting that Trudeau will not be there. And then after the election, we know that there was this announcement by Trump of the 25% tariffs. And then the subsequent dinner that Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago for. And then on December the 10th, that's when we saw the first Trump Governor Justin Trudeau tweet. And then the next day, Musk is back at it. He's such an insufferable fool. He won't be in power much longer. And this goes on, but this is a long history of people who are not necessarily living in Canada, or not necessarily having anything to do with Canadian politics, having a lot to say about Canadian politics. And so I look at all of this and I think we're seeing the same right-wing propaganda machine that helped elect Donald Trump in 2016, that helped re-elect him now, helping remove Justin Trudeau from power and paving the way for Pierre Poilievre to take power.
Yeah, you know what? Those are great questions. And you're not wrong. There is a concerted effort to paint him as a dictator, and he's not. However, and I say however with tongue in cheek, however, Justin Trudeau is focused on the wrong things. As someone who has been, I was fired from a radio job because the extreme left came after me because they said, you can't say certain things. And I'm not going to get into it because it doesn't matter, because I had a radio job and you and I have talked about it several times. And that radio job ended because I was vilified for painting, for a lack of a better term, a gay rapist as a rapist. And it's funny because it's all the same people, the same triggers, the same leftist cabal that comes after you that says, if you don't believe in this, you're a terrible person. And Justin Trudeau has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in this country making people feel badly for the way they feel. And it's not about DEI. It's not about the LGBTQ community. It's about the identity politics. And a lot of people in this country are allowed to feel the way they feel because of how they've grown up and what they've talked about and the values that they carry as families. And so when you think about the guy like Justin Trudeau, you look at him and there's a couple things at play here. You look at him in terms of, oh, he's progressive. Yes, because he spent hundreds of millions of our tax dollars telling people we all have to be as progressive as him. And if you're not, you're the enemy. If you're not, you're wrong. If you're not, you're persona non grata. And there's something you can't do to Canadians. You can't tell them that what they think is wrong or else, right? And so the pushback in Canada against him, which has been incredibly inflated with Russia, disinformation, misinformation, Elon Musk, is not just strategic, but it sits in this arena of, okay, either you get it or you don't. Either you understand that people are allowed to feel a certain way, they're allowed to voice their opinion without being told that they're persona non grata, or they're not. Justin Trudeau also has the added disadvantage of his father being so vilified in the West for so many years. If you remember Pierre Elliott Trudeau, when he went up against Joe Clark, he promised the West he was going to cut the gas prices. And this is during the gas war. And he said, you know what, I'm going to cut gas prices. And Joe Clark made the major mistake, conservative, made a major mistake of saying, we can't because these are global gas prices. I'm going to do my best for Canadians. And he went and lied, vilified. So the name Trudeau out west has got this incredible stink to it and has for about 50 years. So he's ridden this identity politics thing as far as this man. Yeah. And they don't like this man for a variety of really legitimate reasons. And I get those reasons. I get them today. I got them before. And you have to sit back and look at history. You also have to be able to consider that, okay, with history involved, with 9 years, and with the inability, now his own caucus is turning on him going, he's a gimmick. And then you look at where he's from and you look at how underqualified he is despite his experience. He's a drama teacher, dude. That is never going to go away. So the best thing he could do today, with Chrystia Freeland pulling the plug, Sean Fraser, the housing minister, did the same thing the day before. I'm resigning from cabinet because this gentleman is a gimmick. Everything he's trying to do is not, it's for Canada. He says it's for Canada, but it's also for him. And it's basically transparent at this point. They've been doing a wonderful job of making him the enemy and not giving him the bouquets that he deserves because he's done a really good job of a bunch of social programs. But to announce during the fall economic statement that we're behind by $62 billion, even though the general public doesn't even understand where their tax money goes, it's time. It's time for him to go, hey, listen, do I step aside to give the Liberal Party of Canada an opportunity to at least save face, at least maybe form some kind of coalition government to push back against what will be the incoming conservative authoritarian government? Because you and I both know Pierre Poilievre is just this polished turd of a version of Donald Trump. Those are the things at play. It's not just about politics at play. There's strategy at play. And when you lose your finance minister, you lose your deputy prime minister so publicly, it's over. It's just over.
You've done a great job there of really encapsulating the state of mind of Canadians as they have a real trouble with the Prime Minister. And there's no doubt about it. The latest opinion polling, this is from Abacus this evening, puts him 25 points behind the Conservatives. That is not a good picture going into any election. The NDP is within striking distance of that. And, you know, you've got all these other parties that pick up a few percent here and there, but all those percentage points add up. It looks like a very fractured Canada, and it certainly looks like the only party that people are unifying behind is the Conservative Party. However, let me just say this again, because I still think we're seeing what has happened in the United States with Joe Biden happening in Canada. I think everyone thinks Chrystia Freeland is wonderful, but is she the next Prime Minister of Canada? Can she actually defeat Pierre Poilievre? No. I don't think so. She's got no chance of doing that. I think Trudeau has a better chance of doing that. Maybe the way to do this is to fight the propaganda, to be more coherent about how much propaganda there is, and to really change points of Trudeau, as you point out, are his very left-leaning woke sensibilities. You know, maybe he shouldn't be going out there saying he's a feminist all the time. It's not necessary, even though he might be one. There's a way for him to move more to the center and seem a little less woke, if you will, but also be the pragmatic leader that Canada needs right now, rather than replacing him with a purely lovely woman who's really terrific. But this campaign that MAGA is running around the world is really not allowing too many women to rise to power. It's about the return of the patriarchy. It's about the return of masculinity. And it's not about, hey, let's elect the next female president or the next female prime minister of Canada.
You watched it happen with Kamala, right?
Yeah.
You know, you watch the visuals of how powerful she looked, and then you'd look at the Trump rallies where 4,000 people would show up, 60,000 people would show up for a Kamala rally. And again, it's the perception of, are we ready for a female leader? I happen to believe the best person for the job is the best person for the job. And Chrystia Freeland, say what you want about the woman, say what you want about this human being. She's easily the most